Piece of American military history lost deep in the South Pacific. Yesterday, we showed you how the team went looking for the wreck of the USS Hornet. The Japanese sank the aircraft carrier in October of 1942.
Far below the cold waters of the Pacific Ocean, something thought to be lost forever was finally found.
Look at that. Oh yeah. Oh wow. Oh yeah, that's her.
At a depth of about 17,000 feet, an underwater drone made a discovery that left everyone speechless. The wreck of the famous USS Hornet CV-8. For more than 70 years, it had slept quietly in the darkness. But when the drone's camera lights cut through the deep black water, what appeared shocked the entire crew watching.
How about in the top left?
What could still be resting down there, so perfectly preserved after all this time beneath the sea? Join us in this video as we reveal the details. The shocking finding surrounding the USS Hornet CV-8 at 17,000 feet depth. For many years, the resting place of the USS Hornet was one of the great puzzles of the Pacific. For a long time, people searched and guessed, but the ship was still missing. The Pacific Ocean is wide and deep, and even with maps and records, it was very hard to know where she finally sank. Many historians believed she might never be found at all. The search began to take a new shape many years later, when modern technology became powerful enough to look deep under the sea. One of the people who made this search work was Paul Allen, the co-founder of Microsoft and a man known for his deep interest in history and shipwrecks. His research team at Vulcan Inc. had already found other popular World War II wrecks, and they were ready to find the Hornet as well. They put together old Navy records, battle logs, and survivor stories to study every lead. Each report was checked carefully, from the torpedo hits to the timing of radio calls before the ship went down. The team used a special vessel called the RV Petrel, which was built for deep-sea searches. On board, they had better tools like sonar scanners, underwater drones, and remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, that could dive thousands of feet below the surface. The Pacific near the Solomon Islands was their main area, based on wartime directions and naval data. The crew worked day and night, scanning the ocean floor and checking large parts of the seabed. The search was slow, and the team knew that even a small mistake could mean missing the wreck completely. After many hours of searching, the sonar finally picked up something strange, a large, structured object lying about 17,000 feet below the surface. The shape seemed too organized to be natural. When the ROV descended and sent back video images, everyone on the research ship fell silent. There it was, a huge steel structure, covered in marine growth but still standing strong against time. The camera moved closer, and on the side of the hull, they saw the faint marking of the number 8. That number confirmed it. They had found the USS Hornet CV-8 after more than 75 years. The finding shocked and amazed everyone. Regardless of being underwater for years, the ship was very well preserved. Many parts of the carrier still stood upright. The ROV's cameras showed gun turrets still in position and anti-aircraft guns pointing toward the sky, frozen as they were in the final battle. A small aircraft tug sat on the deck, and nearby lay the remains of fighter planes, some with their wings still folded, waiting for orders that would never come. The metal had rusted, but the shapes were clear. It looked as though time itself had stopped down there. Inside the wreck, the team also found personal items, a jacket, a toothbrush, and even a wash kit. These simple things told silent stories about the sailors who once lived and worked on board. The ship was not just a wreck, it was a story, a resting place for around 140 men who had gone down with her. For this reason, the research team treated the site with great respect. No objects were taken, everything was left undisturbed. The goal was not to recover, but to remember. When experts studied the footage and data, they noticed how the damage matched historical reports from the day the Hornet sank. A lot of parts of the hull showed torpedo hits, while the flight deck bore the marks of bomb blast and fire. The bridge, although removed from the main deck, stayed upright, suggesting that the ship went down slowly and in parts instead of breaking apart at once. The structure itself helped researchers understand more about how World War II-era ships handled serious pressure and battle damage. Despite the deep ocean pressure and the passing of time, many of the Hornet's parts were still in place. The internal frames, bulkheads, and even parts of the catapult system could still be seen. Marine life had covered the surfaces, but the overall outline was still perfectly recognizable. The finding of the USS Hornet became more than just a scientific success, it was an emotional time. For historians, families of lost sailors, and the few remaining survivors, the news brought closure. Before that discovery was ever made, how did the war that sent the Hornet to the ocean floor truly begin? Let's delve deeper. The rising storm over the Pacific. In the dark and hard days of October 1942, deep in the Pacific Ocean, tension hung thick in the air. The war between the United States and Japan had turned serious, and both sides were tired but not ready to back down. The waters north of Guadalcanal would soon become the stage for one of the most serious and heartbreaking naval battles of the war, the Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands. For weeks, Japanese forces had been coming together under the command of Admiral Chuichi Nagumo. His fleet, which had the powerful carriers Shokaku and Zuikaku, waited quietly, just beyond reach, their crews worried and tired. Fuel supplies were running low, but their orders were clear: strike the Americans and push them back from the Solomon Islands. The campaign for Guadalcanal had already cost many lives, and now both nations were desperate for control. At the same time, far across the water, American forces prepared for whatever might come. After earlier naval losses, the US was left with only one fully operational carrier, the USS Hornet. The Saratoga was badly damaged, and the Wasp had already gone down. Morale was shaken, but a change in leadership gave the fleet a spark of hope. Vice Admiral William "Bull" Halsey took command, replacing the more cautious Admiral Gormley. Halsey was known for his courage and determination. Even though his forces were outnumbered, he refused to back down. He ordered his men to prepare to face the Japanese head-on. By late October, the American fleet had been divided into three main groups. Task Force 16 was led by Rear Admiral Thomas Kincaid aboard the Enterprise. Task Force 17 was under Rear Admiral George Murray on the Hornet, and Task Force 64 held the battleships and cruisers that would guard them. Together, they moved toward the Santa Cruz Islands, unaware that a massive Japanese armada, 61 ships strong, was waiting for them. At dawn on October the 25th, the stillness of the ocean broke. American scout planes spotted Japanese carriers, Zuiho, Shokaku, and Zuikaku. The news spread quickly across the fleet. Within minutes, American dive bombers were in the air. 2 bombs struck Zuiho, tearing up her flight deck and filling the sky with smoke. But the Japanese had already launched their own planes. Both sides were now racing toward each other, ready for the clash that would decide the fate of the day. By 8:40 a.m. the following morning, the air above the sea became a furious storm. American Wildcats and Avengers went head-to-head with Japanese Zeros. The sky was filled with smoke, fire, and streaks of tracer rounds. In the chaos, American dive bombers managed to hit Shokaku with several bombs, damaging her flight and hangar decks badly. Even the Japanese cruiser Chikuma took damage. But while the US pilots were striking hard, the Japanese were already on their way toward the American carriers. As the skies over the Pacific darkened and enemy planes closed in, one question remained: could the Hornet survive the storm that was about to strike? Let's find out. The fall of the USS Hornet. At around 9:59 a.m., Japanese planes broke through the clouds and spotted a Hornet. Her escort ships immediately formed a defensive ring around her, filling the sky with anti-aircraft fire. The roar of engines and the screech of bombs falling became deafening. Within moments, Hornet took several direct hits. One bomb crashed through her deck and exploded deep inside, shaking the ship violently. Another struck near her forward elevator, spreading flames across the hangar. Then, in a horrifying moment, a damaged Japanese dive bomber, trailing smoke and fire, deliberately crashed straight into the Hornet's island structure, sending burning fuel across the deck. The heat and smoke were unbearable. Men rushed to put out fires, dragging wounded crewmates to safety. Some sailors were burned, others thrown by explosions, but still they fought to save their ship. Just minutes later, another enemy plane dove toward the carrier and slammed into the bow, exploding on impact. The Hornet was left dead in the water, tilting heavily to one side. While Hornet burned, Enterprise found herself the next target. She had managed to avoid the first attacks by hiding in a sudden rain squall, a lucky break. But the second wave of Japanese dive bombers found her. 3 bombs tore through her decks, damaging the hangar and forward elevator. Fires spread, and men scrambled to contain them. Despite everything, the crew of Enterprise kept her afloat. They worked with speed and courage, patching holes and recovering wounded pilots. She would live to fight another day, but the same could not be said for her sister ship. By early afternoon, the sea around Hornet was littered with debris and wreckage. The Japanese had lost many planes, nearly 40 in the morning alone, but they had dealt a devastating blow. The destroyer USS Porter, trying to rescue a downed airman, was accidentally hit by a torpedo and had to be scuttled. The men on Hornet refused to give up. The cruiser Northampton tried desperately to tow her to safety, pulling the massive carrier through the smoke-filled water. But by evening, a new wave of enemy aircraft appeared. Another torpedo hit the crippled ship, flooding her lower decks. At 6:15 p.m., Captain Charles Mason gave the hardest order of his life: abandon ship. As the sun set over the Pacific, hundreds of sailors climbed into lifeboats or leapt into the dark water. The destroyers Mustin and Anderson tried to scuttle the ship so she wouldn't fall into enemy hands, firing torpedoes and shells at her battered hull. But the Hornet refused to sink. Even as flames raged and her decks cracked apart, she stayed afloat, as if she too was unwilling to surrender. As night fell, Japanese destroyers Makigumo and Akigumo arrived and fired their own torpedoes. Finally, at 1:25 a.m. on October the 27th, 1942, the USS Hornet slipped beneath the surface of the ocean. The great carrier that had once launched the Doolittle raid against Japan was gone, lost to the deep waters north of the Santa Cruz Islands. The battle left behind heavy losses. The United States lost 266 men, the Hornet and Porter were sunk, and several other ships were damaged. More than 80 aircraft were destroyed. Japan lost far more pilots, around 400 to 500 men, and nearly 100 aircraft. Though they claimed victory, their losses would haunt them. In truth, the battle was a turning point. The Japanese might have won on paper, but they lost something far more valuable: their experienced air crews. Without them, their naval air power began to fade. The US, though bloodied, rebuilt quickly. Enterprise was repaired, Saratoga returned, and more carriers soon joined the fight. The Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands would be remembered not only for its destruction, but for the courage of the men who fought that day. After seeing how the war slowly began to rise, one question naturally comes to mind: where did the story of the USS Hornet truly begin? And what was the background of the ship that would soon sail into history? Stay tuned for more. The unyielding spirit of the USS Hornet, a hero beneath the waves. The USS Hornet was not built to be famous, but history had other plans. She was part of the Yorktown class of aircraft carriers, and was the last one finished before the United States entered World War II. Her creation showed how serious America was becoming about the growing war overseas. She was launched on December the 14th, 1940, and officially joined the Navy on October the 20th, 1941. The ship was huge, about 824 feet long, 114 feet wide, and weighing over 20,000 tons. She could travel fast, carry heavy loads, and take part in long battles far from home. The Hornet could carry nearly 90 aircraft, including SBD Dauntless dive bombers, F-4F Wildcat fighters, and TBD Devastator torpedo planes. She was built like a floating fortress, armed with 8 5-inch guns, 40mm Bofors anti-aircraft guns, and many 20mm Oerlikon cannons to protect her from enemy planes. Around 2,200 men lived and worked on her: sailors, pilots, engineers, and officers. Life on board was busy and dangerous, but the crew trusted one another and took pride in their ship. When Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in December 1941, America officially entered the war. The Hornet soon became a sign of hope and strength. Her first mission would shock the world, the popular Doolittle raid. On April 18, 1942, 16 B-25 bombers, led by Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle, took off from the Hornet's flight deck. Their goal was to strike Japan's homeland. It was a strong and harmful plan because the Hornet wasn't meant to strike such big planes. The raid caused only small physical harm, but its deep effect was big. It showed Japan that they were not strong, and it gave the United States a strong boost of confidence. The men on the Hornet had proven that courage and creativity could change the path of a war. Just 2 months later, in June 1942, the Hornet joined the Battle of Midway, one of the most important sea battles in history. Alongside her sister ships, the USS Enterprise and USS Yorktown, the Hornet helped destroy 4 Japanese carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu. This victory turned the way of the war in favor of the Allies. Japan's naval power was badly hurt, and the Hornet's role in that success became part of her story. After Midway, the Hornet continued to fight in a lot of hard battles across the Pacific. Her planes carried out strikes that stopped Japanese forces from going forward and helped protect important islands and bases. But steady battle meant there was little time for repairs. The ship and her crew were pushed to their highest point. Many men aboard were tired, injured, or lost friends, but they never gave up. The Hornet became more than just a warship. She became a sign of determination and unity. Even in her final time, the Hornet refused to sink easily. American destroyers fired torpedoes and shells to scuttle her so she wouldn't fall into enemy hands, but she still stayed afloat. It took additional Japanese torpedoes hours later to finally send her beneath the waves. The sight broke the hearts of those who had fought for her, a proud ship now taken by the sea. Years later, survivors would remember her not just as a ship, but as a living sign of courage and sacrifice. Though she was lost, her spirit stayed in the hearts of the men who served on her and the people who heard her story. After the loss of the first Hornet, how did the US Navy rise from the ashes to build a new ship that would not only replace it, but surpass everything that came before? Let's learn more. Rebirth of the Hornet, a new design for a new era. The new USS Hornet was not just another ship, it was a sign of hope and strength after a painful loss. When the first Hornet CV-8 was sunk in 1942, the US Navy quickly began building another to carry on its proud name. This new Hornet CV-12 was built at Newport News Shipbuilding in Virginia, a place well known for making strong and reliable warships. From the start, the design showed how much the Navy had learned from past battles. Engineers focused on making it stronger, safer, and more powerful, ready to face the growing harms of war at sea. The Hornet CV-12 was part of the high-class carriers, one of the most successful ship designs ever made. It was about 872 feet long and powered by big steam turbines that could push it over 30 knots. The big flight deck could handle many planes at once, and new elevators quickly lifted aircraft from the hangar to the deck during battle. The ship also had better radar, stronger bulkheads, and better fire control systems, making it far more stronger than the earlier Hornet. Every part of the ship was built with safety and strength in mind. Its armor was thicker in key areas, and the layout below deck was designed to stop flooding from spreading. The Hornet carried a strong mix of aircraft fighters, bombers, and torpedo planes, allowing it to attack enemies from great distances. This made the ship both a powerful weapon and a floating fortress. When the new Hornet launched in 1943, it showed just how far naval design had come. It could carry more than 3,000 crew members, stay at sea for months, and act as both an airbase and a command center. The ship was fast, strong, and ready for any mission. Even the living spaces were better. Crew quarters were more safe, and food and medical care were made better, helping sailors stay healthy and focused during long work. But the Hornet was more than metal and machines. It was a tribute to those who served before. It carried the spirit of the first Hornet, the courage of its crew, and the promise that their sacrifice would never be forgotten. What do you think about the USS Hornet CV-8? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video shown on your screen to catch up on your favorite celebrity stories. See you there.